So, hello and welcome to our very first episode of Textile. I'm Clara and this is Nani, and we're both interested in historical costuming and textile crafts in general, like knitting, crocheting, lace making, and we had the idea to make a podcast about that because we want to share a bit about what we make and what we love. We're both big fans of the Fruity Knitting podcast because they not only show their own projects but also create a community by showing other people and other people's projects and other people's interests. Maybe you want to talk about what textile means, because it might be written in a slightly unusual way.
Yes, as you have maybe seen, textile is written with R-E, or A-E. We are Germans, so we're living in a city called Aachen, or in the French pronunciation it's Aix-la-Chapelle. And we combined this X of Aix-la-Chapelle with textile because we wanted to include our roots, our home base, the textiles we maybe find here. So yeah, that's the origin of our name. Tell us who you are.
So I'm Clara, as I said. I'm a student in the field of fashion design and clothing engineering. In my bachelor's degree, I studied fashion design, which is still, compared to other design studies, very technical. So it's a design engineering focus. So what I learned is pattern construction, for example, or knitting design, so how knitting works, so machine knitting, how machine knitting works, how the machines themselves are programmed and how to work with them. Now I'm in my master's degree, and it's more a technical field than fashion design. It's more about clothing engineering, about 3D simulation of clothing and 3D simulation of knitwear, for example, because then every piece of knitwear is simulated in a very special way. Besides that, I'm working at the research center of my university, where I'm working in different projects about sustainable garments and sustainable materials. So, for example, we are working with fibers that are more sustainable than others, so more sustainable than those that are used at the moment. And we're looking how they are spun, how they are knit, and how they are finished to create very sustainable garments. So yeah, that's what I do most of the time, besides my hobbies of sewing and knitting and whatever.
So what's your interest then in your hobby, knitting?
When it comes to knitting, at the moment we are trying to recreate some historical knitwear garments. So mostly it's from the from the end of the 19th century, which has a very prominent silhouette that everyone is recognizing. So yeah, we're working at that at the moment. Yeah. So what about you?
So I'm Nani. I also studied at the University of Applied Science, as Clara does.
How is it called? I didn't mention that.
It's the University of Applied Science, in German HS Niederrhein. And I finished 2 years ago with the master's degree, and I didn't study fashion but textiles. And so my focus was really on how to create the fabric, and it was knitting, weaving, every part of creating something that can be worn or not even, but also used in interiors, for like carpet and the furnishing of a chair, anything that can be done with textiles, also in architecture. So that was my focus. And well, when I studied my master's, I got really interested in 3D design. And even if without the fashion part, it was everything with 3D. And that's my job now. I'm a 3D fashion artist and basically recreate garments in 3D and create the pictures. It's about the picture to see what the garment, or in the best case, you don't see that. It is a 3D animation.
So what was the most difficult thing you have simulated in 3D?
It was sacco. What's a sacco?
A man's suit.
A man's suit. Because all of the layers and everything, it's maybe as difficult as sewing it in reality.
Yeah.
I have never sewn one in reality, but in 3D
it's even more difficult, I think.
Okay.
The lining and the pockets and everything.
Yeah, I think
on the programming.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, so many different programs. That's really a thing. Yeah. So, yeah, that's what I do for basically living. And then I have many textile projects like sewing, knitting, crocheting, or ochi lace, so tatting. It's tatting in English. And basically I took all the different fields I tried in my studies, also weaving. I have a weaving loom. I have the weaving loom, not the big machines, but a tiny one. And I basically do all of this in my private leisure time still.
So what are your favorite historical eras?
My favorite historical eras, I think it's the time of 1900s, so the late Victorian, early Edwardian times. The 1920s, that stops for me. That I don't like the silhouette of the 1920s.
I think there are a lot of people who don't like this.
Yeah, I'm personally a great fan of the tiny waist because I have naturally a quite small waist and I like this. And the 1920s miss this in my eyes. But they are very, very, very interesting garments of that time too, but not for my body.
They can look very elegant and very beautiful too. But I agree, it's not an era that I'm very comfortable in, I think.
Yeah.
So investing a lot of time in a project like this, knitting or sewing a garment from the era is...
Yeah. It's maybe wasted time for the own garment, I think. But yeah, and what's your most favorite areas?
What are the ones that I don't like?
1920s.
So I really like the Victorian and Edwardian era too. I love the 1830s and 1820s too. I also really like the 17th century time in the Netherlands. So I've never sewn anything from that era, but it seems very interesting to me. Very different too, but because we have so not as much information as we have for other eras because it's so long ago.
Yeah, that's true.
A period that I don't really like is the 1850s, 1860s.
With the really big bell shape.
I don't know. It's just not a time period that I really like. It's a bit, I don't know.
I would love to try it once and try to walk through a door with that big
skirt.
Yeah,
but the pattern construction is a bit weird. It's so small at the waist, but so big, both at the hem of the skirts, but also here at the shoulders. So it's not beautiful to me.
I've read an article about a garment that Charles Frederick Worth made in that time. And he said he used 100 meters of silk for just one skirt. 100 meters! That's so much.
How much did it weigh?
A lot. And the best was the description how it looked. The girl or the woman looked like a big violet flower.
Oh, that's beautiful.
I find it still strange. Yeah, so... that's about us, and maybe you wonder how we met. We actually met at university, but it's a funny story, so you might tell the story.
So we met first at an event, so it was an exhibition that I organized with a course at university in Düsseldorf. There is the NRW Forum, which is a museum that features modern art, I think, but also this exhibition of students' works from our university. And so we met, but just walked past, so we didn't really talk to each other.
We talked because that's
I made
how
comments
we
about your work.
Yeah, you did. And that's how we first connected via Instagram. That's how
Yes.
I got your Instagram.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But then a few years later, I was in Frankfurt in a museum about historical costumes. And I think it was the time that you got interested in historical costumes too. And I posted a lot of pictures about the costumes there, the clothing. And then you wrote to me in English, which was a bit weird. So, oh, that's cool. Which exhibition is that? And yeah, then I think you forgot that we met before. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it was a surprise to you that, yeah, by the way, we know each other.
And we live next door to each other.
Yes, this was the next thing. It was by the time of Corona and the coronavirus and everything. And then we realized that we live practically next door to each other. So just a few streets away, which was also very funny. Yeah. And then we connected in a way, and we talked about costumes and our projects and what we want to do. And yeah, that's it. That's a long story.
Yeah. A long but funny story in my eyes, and a little bit shameful for me, but okay.
Oh no. It's okay, I can forgive.
So we thought we would make a section called Done and Delighted and show the last project we finished, and maybe you want to start.
Yes, so this is my finished project. Maybe you can hold it for me.
Yes, 1 second.
So I wanted to do a vest pattern because I thought for my first very own made pattern, it's simpler to make one without sleeves.
Sleeves are nasty.
Yeah, sometimes they can be. So I wanted to make something historically inspired. So I wanted to create the silhouette of historical bodices from the Edwardian era. So main typical things are the pointed hem, the very narrow vest without any ease or not much ease, also the narrow shoulders. So this vest is knit bottom up. So I knit the ribbing and then I started doing the short rows. So I used German short rows for this by knitting every side of the front separately by beginning at the bottom and then knitting back and forth and then doing the same for the other side, which was quite difficult to do because first you have the main pattern, which is this ribbing cable looking pattern, and then also the German short rows, which I learned for this vest. I didn't know how to do short rows before. So this was quite a challenge. I'm also planning to do a knitting pattern, so to write a knitting pattern and to release the pattern. And it's quite difficult, not only to knit the pattern, but also to explain to others how to do it. That's quite a challenge.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but I think from here up, it's not that difficult anymore. Yeah. It has quite a lot of details still, so you increase at the sides in the pattern too. So our battery died, so we have to start again. So yeah, I think from this point up, it might be not that difficult anymore. You have to do some increases here to have the front side a vertical line because the neckline comes up from this angle, so you have to do some decreases there. But then I think it might be a very nice project. One thing I might add, I used this pattern. It was inspired by this book here, which features a lot of different patterns, different styles like cables or azure patterns and everything. And I was inspired by one pattern and changed it a bit to fit to this vest.
And we're basically now in the phase of test knitting, so we have a test knitter. And
then we might take test knitters for every size. But that's quite challenging too. Grading knitting patterns is... We had grading at university. We studied grading, but it's not the same for knitting patterns.
No,
it's quite
absolutely
different.
not.
So, yeah. Let's see how it works.
We will let you know when it's available as a pattern, if you're interested. I'm definitely interested. I will also be a test knitter, so.
That's cool, nice.
I haven't told her yet.
Good to know.
So my project I finished is this sweater. It's also, I started on Christmas last year with it and finished it 3 or 4 weeks ago, so it took quite a while. And it's basically a pattern of a cycling sweater, which I found in an historical paper, but I knitted one before and I didn't like it that much because it doesn't stay in form. So I started another one and added the cables of an Aran sweater because I really like those two. And they are basically of the same time period. The Aran sweater were introduced around 1900 to, well, there are different stories, but the most likely one is that the fishermen or fisher families of the Aran Islands were basically starving, and there was a project that the families start knitting, men and women, everybody, knitting Aran sweaters to sell them so that they earn some money. So that was the one part, and the cycling sweaters also, it started with women making sports.
Yeah.
And that was, 1890s to now, basically.
Yeah.
And there's so funny stories about cycling. I learned that cycling was not that popular in England. So 2 years after it was popular in France and America, it started in England. And there were so funny stories about it. So in the first time there was articles about, yes, women may ride a bike, but if they feel exhausted, they should stop immediately because they could die on the spot. And then 2 years later, there were some articles saying women would lose their hair because of riding a bike, or that the eyes would suffer from the high speed.
Or would not be able to bear any children.
Yeah.
That's a story too.
It was really funny to read that. But there was also basic clothes orders. There were cities, I think it was Ohio, I'm not sure, but there was a ruling that men and women, if they ride a bike, may only wear really wide bloomers, covering everything of the leg. There was it was forbidden to have tights.
What?
The funny thing is, there was a clarification later, and the thing was that women and men look too much alike.
Okay.
So basically there was an example that there was a couple, or a wed couple, with both exactly the same outfit, and that was no-go. So still they have the same rule, but women should be recognizable as a woman. And that's maybe because the reason why the sweaters of women are still with the really puffed sleeves of that time, while the male sweater were with tighter sleeves. But still, I love the shape, and that's why I loved it.
It looks very flattering on you.
Thank you.
Yeah. The cables and everything, and the silhouette of the cables that create this narrow waist.
That was the idea, to really take an emphasis on the waist. So we have also section work in progress, where we show you what we are currently knitting, and I think Clara starts now.
Yeah. So when I made this vest, I wanted to do a sweater too, a sweater as well. So I chose the same pattern, the same main pattern, but changed a few bits. So this is the bodice, it's not finished yet. But I also made a pointed vest for this one. But here the short rows are only included in the ribbing, not in the main pattern, which is a bit easier to do than to make short rows while also keeping the pattern. So it's this bodice piece like this. And then I added some sleeves. So this is one of the sleeves. It was also inspired by sweaters from the end of the 19th century with these big puffy sleeves. Not as extreme as these ones, but yeah.
They are still quite puffy, I think.
Yes. Yeah. I want to add raglan sleeves, so I want to make them go into the neckline instead of just having satin sleeves. So let's see how this works.
So you're knitting from the bottom up, where I have knitted them from the top down.
Ah, you knit top down, okay. Yeah.
Okay, interesting. Yeah. I'm knitting a quite big project because my nature is to never do the easy thing. Mm-hmm. And I started a fair isle. I have never knitted fair isle before and had to learn it because I had the idea of knitting a cycling sweater again as a fair isle, but I don't know, maybe you know temperature blankets. So that are blankets which each row, each square, each form basically has one color based on the temperature at the location one lives. Mm-hmm. And I have seen that and I find it quite cool, but I don't like blankets.
I don't like blankets.
No, I don't like making blankets because it's boring, stupid work.
Yeah.
And therefore I thought I like garments, so I will make a garment. I could have done it with existing pattern, but that's not like I work. So I drafted the pattern and painted in Illustrator each pixel for a color, each stitch, and it's basically inspired by I think it's Valenciennes lace. And based on that, I created an entire pattern, and each row has the color of the temperature of that day. So the first 2 rows here are quite orange. It's the color for 14 degrees approximately. 14, yeah. Celsius. And it was quite hot on the first day of this year. And that's why we have those 2
crazy
bright rows. Yeah. My boyfriend basically wrote me a program which pulls the temperatures and color codes them, so that I basically just have to look up which color code I have to use. And that's how I will knit it. And
so what I like about this one, so mostly these blankets are very colorful and very bright. So I like that you chose rather muted colors so that they fit together. So even if you're red and a dark green, they still look nice to each other. Yeah, which I like.
I have based them on a color chart I made. I have created a color chart for my entire wardrobe, and based on that, I created another color chart with the colors for the sweater, so that it will fit to the rest of my wardrobe.
So you have a video about that too?
I have a video about that too. Yeah. I have another channel called Ankani, so if you want to see that, I can maybe link it. I don't know. Okay. So yeah, there you can look it up and see what was the basic idea.
That looks like a lot of work. So you have very tiny stitches in there. Let's see how long it takes for you.
Quite a while, I guess, because also I have more rows than a year has. So more than 365 days. So I have to knit at least till next year. Yeah, that's what I'm doing now. I probably will create smaller projects at the same time.
So now we come to our next segment, which is from the archives. So I'm wearing another vest right now, which is a bit different than the one I made. It's from the knitting designer Maya Carson, and it's called Sommerwesten 2021. So it's from last year. I changed it a bit, so normally it has quite a boxy shape, but I like rather fitted garments, so I added some increases at the sides. So here I also started at the bottom and knit up. This pattern is quite easy and quite manageable, and this whole vest was quite a delight to knit. Yeah.
It's perfect for knitting at the train, right?
Yes. Train knitting. I do a lot of train knitting at the moment. What about you?
I have brought my very, very first knitted piece.
Mm-hmm.
It's this scarf. I have no idea when I knitted. I think I was maybe 10, maybe 8, I don't know. And basically my mom said, when you have knitted such a scarf, you know how to knit.
Yeah.
And
Knits and pearls.
Yeah, knits and pearls, and the fringes at the sides. So that was my very first garment. And they still have it, and it still looks quite okay. I don't like the color anymore, but yeah, that was my very first garment.
Looks very neat, the stitches.
I'm quite a perfectionist. I always try
Even
to.
at the age of 8 or 10.
Never lost it. Yeah, I always try to make it quite even. But I think you can see it on the one side, it's a little bit looser than on the other side. So
progress.
you can see the progress.
Yeah. Good.
Yeah. But now it's too warm for that.
So now we come to our next segment, which is called textiling. We didn't know how to call it else. So we chose the segment for showing you around when we go on markets or events, or just when we go outside and do some knitting.
Or other textile crafting.
Yeah, it's not all about knitting, it's just about historical costumes in general and textile crafts for us. Yeah. So we went to a British fair. It's called British Flair. It was on a castle nearby, or at a castle nearby, which is called Schloss Merode. So we were allowed to go there and to have fun.
Strolling around.
Yeah.
Filming.
The weather wasn't very nice. It was very cold and rainy all day. So typically British, as some might say.
Yeah. That's the reason for not knitting there, because it was really.
We wanted to do some knitting, but then it wasn't very cozy, sadly, because the location is beautiful, the castle too. Yeah, so we like to show some pictures, some videos we took at this, and yeah.
So then you can come with us on this little trip, and this is also the end of this episode. It's quite a knitting episode, but in future we will show other projects, like I think you're doing some bobbin lace at the moment. I'm sewing a blouse, so that we will show.
We try to separate every episode by having a theme.
Yeah.
So this one was about knitting, and
So have a great time,
and until next time.
bye.